There are moments in life when we finally sit still enough to hear the quiet things our hearts have been trying to say. And sometimes all it takes is a breath, just one breath, deep and honest, to realize we've been carrying something heavy for far too long. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's regret, maybe it's a name we started calling ourselves somewhere along the way. Failure, disappointment, burden. And sometimes healing doesn't begin with a grand breakthrough or a big decision. Sometimes it starts with a whisper, a gentle nudge that says, it's time to stop punishing yourself. So let's make some space here right now, not for blame, not for judgment, but for a kind of honesty that heals rather than harms. You're here listening because you've lived long enough to look back, to reflect, to wonder about the choices you've made, the words you wish you could take back, the people you lost along the way, maybe even the version of yourself you abandoned. In that reflection, it can be so tender. It can hurt, yes, but it can also be the beginning of peace because there's a truth that's often forgotten in the noise of shame and self-criticism. You are not your mistakes. You never were. We all carry stories, and not just the ones we tell out loud, but the ones that live in our bones, the ones that show up in our quietest moments, the ones that follow us through the years like shadows. These stories are shaped by moments, some big, some small, that stuck to us like glue. Maybe you were too harsh with someone you loved. Maybe you walked away when you should have stayed. Maybe you gave up too soon. Or maybe you stayed too long. Whatever it was, that moment became a story, and that story became a belief. I always mess things up. I never get it right. I don't deserve to be forgiven. The human heart is so tender, so eager to do right, to love well, to matter. So when we fall short, and we all do, it cuts deep. Over time, those cuts turn into scars, and those scars start telling us who we are. We begin to believe that the worst things we've done are the most accurate parts of our identity. And yet, if you look at your life with gentler eyes, you'll see more than failure. You'll see someone who tried, someone who learned, someone who kept going even when it hurt. Those are stories too, and they deserve to be told. There's a truth that many of us were never taught, a truth that, if we had known it earlier, might have saved us years of inner pain. Guilt is something we feel, but identity is something we become. And somewhere along the way, many of us took guilt, real or imagined, and let it shape how we saw ourselves. We stopped saying, I made a mistake, and started saying, I am a mistake. That shift might seem small, but it changes everything. Guilt can be a healthy response. It tells us when we've strayed from our values, when we've hurt someone we care about. It nudges us to make amends, to reflect, to grow. But when guilt lingers too long, when it's never met with forgiveness, it curdles into shame. And shame isn't there to help us grow. Shame wants us to shrink, to hide, to disappear. You might not even realize how deeply shame has settled into your story. Maybe it shows up when you look in the mirror and don't like what you see. Maybe it's in the way you downplay your accomplishments, or how you feel unworthy of kindness. But shame is not truth. It is a fog that clouds the truth. And the truth is, your value never disappeared. It was just buried under years of self-blame. If you're like most people, you've made your share of mistakes, maybe more than your share. But what if we stopped seeing those mistakes as things that define us and started seeing them as things that shaped us? Not as chains that hold us down, but as teachers that showed us who we are and who we want to become. Yes, there are things we wish we hadn't done, words we wish we could unsay, choices we would give anything to reverse. But those moments, painful as they are, taught us something. They taught us where our limits were. They taught us where we needed healing. They taught us about courage, about compassion, about truth. They taught us to pay attention. And if we're willing to see those lessons, We can finally release the shame that's been keeping us stuck. You don't have to celebrate your mistakes, but you can honor what they taught you. You can acknowledge that even in your worst moments, there was still a part of you that was learning, growing, reaching. And that matters. That part of you still exists, and it's worth listening to. The stories we tell ourselves are powerful. They shape our days. They shape our decisions. They shape our relationships. But here's the miracle. Stories can change. You are allowed to go back into the pages of your life and say, I see this differently now. You are allowed to choose a softer narrative, one that honors the truth without chaining you to it. Maybe you've been telling yourself, I was a terrible parent. But what if the truth is, I was a parent who was hurting and trying to do the best I could? Maybe you've said, I failed my family. But what if the deeper truth is, I carried more than anyone knew, and I tried to protect them even when I didn't know how? Rewriting your story doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means refusing to keep living under a version of it that only shows the pain. Your past is not a fixed object. It is a river. You can choose to walk beside it with tenderness rather than fear. Forgiveness is often spoken about like it's something you give to others. But the deepest, hardest kind of forgiveness is the one you offer to yourself. And for many of us, that forgiveness has been withheld for far too long. We believe we need to suffer first, pay a price, prove we've changed. And even then, we question whether we deserve it. But the truth is, self-forgiveness is not about proving anything. It's about choosing peace over punishment. It's about understanding that your worth is not something that can be erased. It's about saying, I acknowledge what happened, and I will no longer use it as a weapon against myself. You are not weak for wanting peace. You are not selfish for seeking healing. You are simply human. And every human deserves a chance to be free from the past. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is remembering with kindness. It is looking at the person you were and offering them the grace you needed at the time. There's something beautiful that happens when we stop fighting ourselves. When we stop trying to outrun our past and instead turn toward it with open hands. We begin to reclaim the story. We begin to realize there is still life left, still beauty left, still time to be the person we long to be. You are more than the worst thing you have ever done. You are more than the sorrow you carry. You are more than the years you think you lost. You are here, still breathing, still learning, still capable of joy, and that means your story isn't over. What if today is the beginning of a new chapter? Not because everything is perfect, not because the pain has disappeared, but because you are choosing to live with your eyes open and your heart soft. That is courage. That is healing. That is what reclaiming your story looks like. So here we are, at the end, or maybe the beginning, depending on how you choose to see it. You've made it through this time together, sitting with the parts of your story that don't often get spoken aloud, the quiet regrets, the long-held shame, the memories that surface when the world grows quiet and the heart begins to stir. You face them, not to be punished by them, not to dig up pain for the sake of pain, but to gently remind yourself that healing is possible. That change is not reserved for the young. That peace is not just for those who've done everything right. If no one ever told you, let me be the one to say it now. You are not your mistakes, not the one you still beat yourself up for, not the one that changed in everything, not even the one you never admitted out loud. You are not your worst day. You are not the choices you made when you were afraid, lazy, grieving, overwhelmed, or simply unaware. You are not defined by the moment you fell apart. You are not bound to the moment you turned away instead of toward. You are not frozen in that version of yourself who didn't know what to do. You were doing the best you could with what you had, with the tools and understanding available to you at the time. And that counts for something. That counts for a lot. You are also the apology you whispered into the dark when no one else was listening. You are the hand you reached out when it felt impossible. You are the love you kept giving, even when your own heart was cracked open. You are the lessons you learn, the strength you earn, the tenderness you've come to carry like an old friend. And here's something else the world often forgets to say, especially to those of us who have lived many years. It's not too late. It's not too late to rewrite how you see yourself. It's not too late to offer yourself grace. It's not too late to stop rehearsing the same painful narrative and instead begin telling the truth, the deeper truth, the truth that you are human, the truth that you've grown, the truth that you're still becoming. You do not need anyone's permission to let go of the punishment you've been carrying. You don't need to wait for someone else to finally understand you, or validate you, or forgive you. You can decide right now that you are worthy of peace. You can decide that your soul deserves rest. And you can decide that this moment, this quiet moment right here, is the one where your story begins to soften. So take this with you as you move forward. Let it live in your heart. You are not your mistakes. You are the meaning you choose to give to what you've lived through. Your story continues, and it's worth telling. With kindness, with courage, with you. If this spoke to you, I'd love for you to be part of this growing community. Go ahead and like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. This space is for healing, for reflection, for real connection. Thank you for being here.